I was sitting at a coffee shop the other day, watching my friend wrestle with a stack of glossy flyers that kept slipping off his cheap desktop cutter. He kept telling himself he'd just buy a better one next month. But every time he opened a new box of paper, his cutter jammed or left ragged edges, and the frustration was building fast. I could see the hesitation in his eyes. Spend a couple $100s on a tool that might still miss the mark, or keep fighting with a blade that's barely cutting a single sheet. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. That moment made me dig into what really matters in a rotary cutter beyond the glossy marketing copy. The market is flooded with entry-level models that promise precision, yet most of them give up the moment you try to cut a stack thicker than 5 sheets, or they require you to manually clamp every piece. For anyone who does more than occasional trimming, think graphic designers, small print shops, teachers preparing class handouts, or a home office that prints and assembles newsletters. Those little compromises quickly become costly in time and wasted material. The Dahle 448s premium rotary trimmer is positioned as a step up from those budget options. It's not just a cutter, it's a compact workstation. The steel stand folds flat for storage but, when set up, holds the 51-inch cutting arm at a comfortable height, and a built-in paper catch keeps the finished pieces from scattering across your floor. The first thing I noticed in a real-world test was the automatic clamp. Instead of manually aligning each sheet, the clamp drops down and grips the whole stack in one smooth motion. When I fed a 20-sheet batch of matte brochure stock, the clamp held everything evenly, and the cut came out clean on both the forward and reverse strokes. The self-sharpening blade is another practical win. Most rotary cutters rely on a replaceable blade that dulls after a few dozen cuts, forcing you to keep spare blades on hand. Dahle's dual-barrel guide bar is engineered to keep the edge honed as you slice, which means you get consistent cuts day after day without the hassle of swapping blades. In a busy office where you're pulling prints every hour, that translates into less downtime and fewer spare parts to order. German engineering shows up in the way the guide bar slides. There's a subtle but noticeable resistance that keeps the blade from wobbling, even when you're cutting a heavy cardstock. I tried cutting a stack of 24-point cover stock for a client's flyer mock-up, and the cutter held its line without any drift. That kind of accuracy is hard to achieve with cheaper models that tend to wander after a few cuts, especially when you're working with larger formats. Now, no tool is perfect, and the 448s does have a few trade-offs worth mentioning before you click Add to Cart. First, the 20-sheet capacity, while generous compared to many home office cutters, can still be limiting for print shops that routinely process 50-sheet runs. You'll end up feeding the cutter multiple times, which adds a tiny bit of time. Not a deal breaker, but something to consider if volume is a core part of your workflow. Second, the unit weighs a solid 15 pounds. It's sturdy, yes, but moving it from a storage closet to a different room isn't as effortless as a lightweight tabletop model. If you're renting a small studio and need to shuffle equipment weekly, that weight might be a minor inconvenience. Who should definitely consider the Dahle 448s? Anyone who values consistent, clean cuts on a regular basis. Graphic designers who need to trim printed proofs, teachers who produce handouts for multiple classes, and small business owners who assemble marketing kits will find the automatic clamp and dual direction cutting a real-time saver. The steel stand also means you can keep the cutter permanently on a dedicated workstation, turning it into a reliable part of your production line rather than a portable afterthought. On the flip side, if you only cut a few sheets a month, maybe you're a hobbyist who trims photos for a scrapbook or a writer who occasionally needs to trim a manuscript, you might be better off with a lighter, lower-capacity rotary cutter. The premium price of the Dahle 448s reflects its durability, the self-sharpening mechanism, and the added convenience of the clamp. Those benefits are most felt when you're cutting in volume. For occasional users, the extra features could end up feeling like paying for a luxury you never truly use. Another practical consideration is the learning curve. The automatic clamp is intuitive once you get the rhythm, but the first few cuts can feel a bit different if you're used to manual clamping. I spent a few minutes aligning the guide bar and adjusting the stop to match the length of my sheets, and after that the cutter was a breeze. If you're comfortable spending a short setup period to gain long-term speed, the investment pays off. In terms of cost versus value, the Dahle 448 sits in a higher price bracket than the average consumer rotary cutter but they